Well, welcome back to part 2 of our drawer series within our kitchen build series. I hope you like what you see so far. If you do, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and enjoy. Okay, so we've got all our drawers built for this project. This is one unit with the 3 drawers installed. This is where the cooktop goes up top. That's why we've got a false panel on there. In total, we've got 14 drawers for this project. And what we're going to do now that they're built is we're going to get into edge banding. So give us a focus. There we go. As you can see, we're using the Baltic birch plywood with a really nice core on it. I've actually seen people build drawers with this finish, just sand the top and then actually urethane it. And it actually doesn't look too bad. It's not ugly like most plywoods. Anyways, so we're gonna go from this raw to this edge banded, and we're gonna get into our edge banding techniques because I just can't do anything normal. So let's get into it. Okay, edge banding. It comes in many different types. This is Sapele. This is cherry. This is birch, which is what we're going to be using today on our drawers. Walnut. That's pine. And good old melamine. Now they come in different widths and different lengths. You can get them in, this is 3/4, the melamine. It's used for 5/8 melamine sheets. Typical is 13/16 to 7/8 thickness, which is for 3/4 boards. But you have to, it's hard to get good quality stuff in 3/4. You have to usually go 13/16 or 7/8. And if you're doing 5/8 drawers like we are, you get a little bit extra waste, but that's no big deal considering the overall effect on the cost of the job. So there's a couple of different ways we can do edge banding. One is with this tool. It's made specifically for edge band cutting, and you can see we got 1, 2, 3, 4 little cutters in there. And basically what you want to do is iron on your edge banding to your stock. Nice hot iron. I set it on cotton, or pretty much the highest setting. You want to make sure you go across and hold so you're melting the glue. And then once you've gone across, all you need to do is take your tool here and bring it to the end, squeeze it, and then you just drag it along the material and you get a nice clean edge on there. That's one way of doing it. Now, once that's done, you're just going to take your utility knife, put it on another piece of wood, cut your 2 ends off, and you're golden. The one thing that I have found on occasion, not very often, but on occasion, is when you're using this, if you run into a grain going in the wrong direction, sometimes it'll tear the banding just a little bit, and it leaves a bit of a little chunk out in the actual. This is really straight grain birch, so it cuts nice and clean. But when you start getting to something like this cherry, so you can imagine cutting against this grain here, there's a chance of little chunks coming out because you're actually pulling out on the grain. So I've come up with a little different method that I'm going to show you in a minute. One thing I do want to say is the lengths of these rolls, you can get them in, here I can source them at 25, 50, and 200-foot rolls. I usually buy 200-foot rolls because it's a lot more economical. Anyways, one thing you have to look out for with edge banding is the splicing. This is a piece of cherry that's been spliced, and you'll find splices throughout your rolls of edge banding. Now, if you look at this, you've got sort of a lot more red tones in this piece here and a lot more brown tones. If this is on the edge of a cabinet, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. So you got to be very careful and look out for these splices and eliminate them if necessary. On a nice straight grain birch, it doesn't show up very often, but in the darker woods like cherry or sapele, which is also straight grain, it doesn't show up that much on that one. But you got to look for these color differences because you don't want to have that. You don't want to find this out after everything's done and you threw some stain on it. It's like, oh my God. So be very careful of that. Okay, let's get into our method. Okay, reason number one for the method I used for edge banding is this here, the parting line. Now this actually came out pretty good and will probably sand out and won't be noticed. But you'll notice on some occasions that the parting line is a little bit too obvious. And I don't like to see that. I'd rather see a nice, clean, seamless transition. The only thing you see is grain direction changing from horizontal to vertical. The other issue that you can run into, and I've made this one drawer with one piece that's out on purpose. If you take a look, you can see that this back piece here is probably about 128th of an inch higher than this piece here. So if these were all pre-banded and this piece was assembled, this joint is going to show. You're going to see it bump up from here to here. And that's going to reveal a parting line a lot more and a lot more. It's going to be a lot more dramatic. The other thing that I've done with this drawer is I made it, hopefully you can see, just a little bit narrow. So we're about a 64th there on the shy side. And I just want to show this because this is, the occasional reality that you may have to deal with. And, if you edge band this way as opposed to pre-banding and then assembling, you're not going to be able to resolve these issues right here. This would end up being short and showing, and you're just gonna have to remake everything. And let's face it, everybody's not perfect all the time. And that's why I've done this panel, just to show you why I use this method and how you're able to fix these little issues. And that's what we're gonna get into right now. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna address is our difference in height between these two pieces here. We wanna take down our piece that's a little bit taller until it's flush with the one here. So you can use a block sander. I'm just going to use a random orbit really quickly. There, and that's all it takes. We're nice and flush, and this parting line is no longer going to be visible. All right, so let's get our piece edge banded, and then we'll show how we deal with this other situation here. First thing I do is grab one of our pieces, go along the full length piece of plywood, grab our iron, and start setting it on top, holding down firmly. What you want to do is feel your edge here so that it's flush with the inside, or even slightly overhanging, and you can just take it down with sandpaper really quickly afterwards. Now, I'm telling you right now, this process is not as quick as doing the individual panels, because there is a little bit more to trimming them and sanding them, but I find you get better overall results in the end, in my opinion. And it's the one thing that I'll sacrifice a bit of time on because I really like the results on it. So once you got your piece down, you just want to take your iron and bring it across the edges so you slightly burnish it. And where you've got a lot of overhang on the outside edge here, it actually puts a bit of a crease in it, which makes it a lot easier for cutting later, as well as burnishing the edge to the edge of the plywood. And what I like to do next is take my two pieces that are going to be running in between the other two pieces. I get a nice square, straight piece of plywood or lumber, whatever you want. Use my engineer square and just cut a perfect 90-degree cut into the edge, so you got something nice and square to work with. And we'll do that to both of those pieces at the same time. Get lined up and cut off, and there you go, nice and square. So then what we're going to do is we're going to take our square edge that we've just cut, we're going to butt it up against the first piece that we've glued on. I'm going to get it lined up to our edge here and butt it up to our piece here. And this is the actual corner that we just sanded down. And you just want to push it in tight so there's virtually no parting line, and we're nice and even. And then we just continue on all the way across. And just before you get to the edge, we're just going to stop a hair short, enough so it's held down, but so we're not glued up right over the edge there. Then we're going to burnish it on both sides. And we're going to go do the other one. Okay, we've got both our pieces down now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our engineer square and we're going to get it close to flush to our edge. So if you went like this, you butt it up to your edge, and then you just pull it so you see a hair of daylight. You don't want to be too far over, because obviously you're going to end up seeing this plywood when you butt up the other piece, and you're going to have to cut this back again. So it's better to err with it just being a hair short, and then we can sand this little piece of overhang. Like I said, this is not the fastest, most efficient method, which is usually not something that's part of my routine, but this is something that I do to get the look that I want. So there you are. We're just a hair shy of our plywood. So now we're gonna get the other one cut, and we'll put our last piece on, and we'll see how it comes out. So we're just getting to the end of our last piece here. And if you remember, we didn't go all the way gluing this piece down. So when you get to the corner, you just want to get it on top of both pieces to make sure everything's glued down nicely. And then we can just push our piece in and get it nice and flush. Burnish our edges. And we're ready to cut our piece and deal with our piece that was too short. Okay, so as you can see, this is our corner where we're a little bit shy by about a 64th of this face here. And this is where we're going to have to try and get a nice straight cut to give the illusion that everything is square. One thing I should mention is make sure you've always got nice, fresh, sharp blades in your knife. I've got like 4 Olfa knives, and I think they're all on the job site right now. So I'm using this cheap piece of junk. But nonetheless, what I like to do is get the knife blade up against the edge and then give it just a little bend and push it down and then drag it across. So you get a nice, clean, straight cut. So we'll do that for this section here. As you can see, we got that pulled off nicely. And the next thing I like to do is take another fresh blade out of the pack. So you can see I buy in bulk. And we're just going to set it flush to the face here, and we're just going to run it back and forth just to get a groove cut in there. And once that groove is cut, we're going to come back with our knife and we're just going to pull right along it. And we're just going to pull right along that, get into that groove. Until it's cut off. And there's our little protrusion there. May take a tiny hair of sanding, but we're going to cut this portion here and come back and you're going to see how it looks. Okay, so there's our piece, and you can see we're just on a little bit of an angle right there. So all we're going to do is grab our block sander, and we're going to use this face again, and we're just going to come along and gently drag it across until it looks square. And that's about it. Once we sand the top, we'll be golden. That's how you hide your little shortcomings right there. One further thing to do with this is this should be the piece that the face of your drawer mounts onto, and I'll show you in a second. So what you want to do with this is I would mark this with an arrow pointing just to show that this is the bad portion. And when I mount my drawer face, you just make sure that that is the piece that it's mounted to, because even though it looks really good, no one's going to see it, and you want your back portion, which is the portion that everyone's going to see, to be perfect back there. So if you got a little defect, you hide it behind the drawer front, and what they might see at the back is what you want to have perfect, if at all possible. So there you go. Okay, so you can see we got really nice joints or parting lines. This is our defective one, and you can see from the top it looks pretty good. A little fuzz from the bottom there that we can clean up, but came out pretty good. Now, for the portions where you've cut this piece here, left it a little shy, and this piece might have a slight lip on it, all you need to do, see if I can do this with one hand, is just take your knife blade, run it along there, and trim it off, just like that. Then a light sanding and you're golden. I'm going to show you how I use this knife. The method I just showed you, I use it on large units as well, and I'll show you on another drawer coming up. Okay, so say you've got some cabinets like this. They're tall, they're deep, and they need edge banding. Not the easiest thing to flip around. So here's a quick little method that I use sometimes, but sparingly. So once we've got our banding on, I'm just going to show you this on a drawer. All you need to do is take a block of wood. You have to trim these edges here. This we'll do differently, but these edges, so you just put a block on, get underneath it, give it a trim and a snap, and you're good. Now, you have to take a really good look at the grain when you're doing this. Come on, give me focus. So the grain on here is going out this way. So this is the direction you want to cut in. If you cut this way, you're going to end up chunking it in here, guaranteed. So I'll show you quickly how I do this method. So again, you're going to want a really sharp, fresh blade, and all you're going to do, because the blade has it's actually got a grind angle to get the point, you just want to have it on a very, very slight angle, and you want to lean it forward. So you're cutting downward, and you just hold it flush and drag it across, and you've got your cut. Now that one worked its way out because of the grain. So you just go back in and do the same thing there. Now you're perfect. That makes it easier to do these large units. And as long as you got a nice sharp blade, you can get it really close to flush, and then a little bit of sanding and you're golden. Like I said, these aren't the most efficient and quickest techniques, but it does afford, if you have an edge where you're not flush on top, you can take one down by doing this after the fact. You can take one edge down so you're perfectly flat this way, and it lends for getting a nice tight joint here with no parting line. This hasn't been sanded yet, but it will come out perfect. And this is one of the few things that I do that is less efficient than the standard, but I do like to do it my way, and I do like the way it comes out, and that's why I do it. And it's also something that can be helpful to you if you don't have one of these and you don't want to go out and buy one. You can just do it with a standard utility knife and you're good. So that's edge banding. So we're at the last phase before we put our drawer fronts on, and we've got all our drawers installed except a couple. I think what I'm going to do is, we've got this cabinet here and it's getting 3 drawers put in it, and I'm going to show you the real easy way of doing things. Let me just start off by saying I base my drawer sizes. I make life simple for myself. So these 3 drawers here, those are the drawer styles. So the style is basically the height of your drawer front, and that's what we're going to base our measurements on. So this is the unit we're doing here. We got just over 9 inches for our top drawer, and then 2 that are around 10 3/4. So basically what I do is I do my drawer size. I try and knock about 1.5 inches to 2 inches off. So, and then the bottom is added onto it. So this is our 9-inch drawer, 9 1/16, whatever. So I just like, okay, I'll just cut the pieces at 7 inches even. Ends up being 7 5/8. So we're about 1.5 inches less than our drawer front. Then the 10 3/4, 10 13/16 ones will knock off 2 inches. You get around 8 inches. Now we're at about 8 5/8 with our bottom on it. So I'm cutting 8-inch pieces, 7-inch pieces. The only real difference is the difference between the top of your drawer front and the top of your actual drawer, which is really not that big of a deal if you're within, 1/2 inch or so. So that makes life easy for that portion of it. Now, in terms of installing the slides, we've got our soft close slides, which when I was explaining to you about slides, I didn't show you these ones, but they've just got a slightly different mechanism for taking them apart. And all it is just, instead of that little lever that was here, we've got a little button. You just push it in and it comes apart like that. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our slides prepared. Okay, so now that we've got them taken apart, the smaller piece, this is what goes on the side of your drawer. And then this is the portion that mounts inside your cabinet. It's pretty simple. You get 14 screws with each pair of slides. So we get three screws going into the cabinet. There's a tab here, and a tab here. So that's 1, 2, 3 screws for the one that goes in the cabinet. And then we put 4 screws in the one that mounts to the drawer. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's basically it. That's what they recommend, and that's what I do. Remember, your drawer slides are rated. So these are 75-pound slides. And if you don't use all the screws and put them in the place that they recommend, then you're not going to meet the weight requirements as per factory specs. So use all your screws and put them where they tell you to put them. It makes life simple. Now, back to these are our drawer fronts. So we got 9 1/16, 10 13/16 times 2. When it comes to our tab, we're going to take our top drawer, the 9 1/16, and we're just going to measure down from the top. We're going to have a 1/8 space between the countertop and the top of the drawer. So we're going to go 9 1/16 plus an 8, so 9 3/16. We're just going to put a tiny little tick there, and then our bottom drawer front is 10 13/16. So we'll go up 10 13/16 exactly, and just put a little tick there. Simple. Now all you got to do is measure up from the inside. So we're at 10 1/16. So that mark, and then the second mark, we're at 20 15/16. So I'm just going to take this piece here, and I'm just going to write on top of it that we're at 10 1/16. And then what was the second one? 20 15/16. And that is all you need to know, those two measurements for 3 drawers. For 4 drawers, I like to work from the top down. And again, you just need to add the 2 panels together plus the whatever gap you have between them. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this basically a jig fixture, and we're going to cut it to 20 15/16 and mount our slide. Okay, I'm going to show you why it's so easy to just go by your drawer front heights for your measurements for locating your slides. If you look at this, let's say we're coming down 6 inches from the top, and that's the bottom of your drawer front. So when you mount this piece here to the bottom of your drawer, this piece here is flush with the bottom of your drawer. We've got 1/2 inch between the bottom of the drawer and the bottom of the drawer front. So we're covered. Now, the other issue would be, where is the location of the next drawer below it? Well, when this whole assembly comes out, we've still got 1/4 of an inch between the bottom of our slide and the bottom of the mechanism that pulls it in and out. So there's no chance for contact whatsoever. If you go by the exact dimensions, subtract an 1/8, add an 1/8, whether you're going from top to bottom or bottom to top, you're guaranteed that you're gonna have this covered by your drawer front. And that's about it. It's pretty simple, and we like to keep it simple. Okay, so we've got our piece cut to 20 15/16. I've double checked it against our little tick, and we are good. So we've got our 3 tabs here, and as you can tell, there's a little oval opening here, so you can reach two of the mounting points that are typically covered by the track. So when we get these set in place, you want to go for the one that's readily visible before you start fiddling around in here, so you're positioned properly, and then it's a little bit easier to get these ones in without fiddling around too much. So let's do that. Now, if you want, you can take a spare piece of plywood, clamp it to the front, and use it as your reference point. That's not as easy as it sounds, because when these are taken apart, they will not go all the way in, because the rail that rides inside here is what activates this mechanism. So in order to do that, you'd have to deactivate your mechanism. Then that slides all the way in. Then you put your piece on the face, hold up your plywood, get it flush, and screw it in. That's a bit too much time for my liking. What I like to do is I just like to set this at the inside edge of the edge banding and screw it in there. And that's what we're gonna do. So while I'm doing this, I'm gonna go on a little bit of a rant. Because I'm a Canadian boy, I'm obviously a fan of Robertson screw heads. And I despise Phillips for that exact reason. They're the worst head, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why. Because an American invented them, but I hate them. And because everything that's made pretty much is to American specs, because they're the big consumers, it's always got to be a garbage Phillips head, which Robertsons stay in so much nicer inside your driver tip. Now, okay, fine, get a magnetic tip. I've got magnetic tips, but I don't need them if I was using a Robertson. So there we've got our piece. We're flush. We've got our reference piece. I'll do the other side, and we'll carry on from our next piece. Sorry about the rant. Rant continues. So rather than bowing to the Robertson head, the Americans decided to come up with a couple of different designs that would hold and torque a lot better than the garbage Phillips head. And they came out with I think the Torx bit is European, if I'm not mistaken. And Torx is pretty good. A little bit on the thin side though. I think now the premium bit is the star head. I recently bought some Massam screws for some for my log pavilion that I'm building out back, and they're like 8 to 12 inches long, and they got big fat heads on them, and they got a star drive on them, and you can crank them really good, but better than Robertson. But that's now. I'm talking about like since the 20s or whenever they came out with them. I don't know. I'm just not a fan at all of Phillips. I despise them. Okay, so we've got this in. Now let's get mounted, the rails mounted onto the drawer. Okay, again, we're keeping things nice and simple. All we're doing is we're taking our track that mounts to the drawer, and we're just having them both on a flat surface, lined up with the front, and drive in our 4 screws. I try as much as possible. I will occasionally use the slotted one here. I try and use the rounded ones. If you've made everything square, it should all line up nicely. If there's a need for adjustment, then you're unlucky, you made a mistake, and you're compensating for it. Good old Phillips heads. So, just flip it around. This stop tab always goes to the front. In fact, this was our demonstration piece. So this is the one where we used our edge banding to cover up our shortcomings. And we're making that the front of our unit. So again, we'll just take our slide that mounts to the drawer. Get a flat reference at the front. Pop in our 4 screws. 1, 2, I'm trying to keep the swearing off of my channel as much as possible. But Phillips, you're testing me. Okay, ready to install. Okay, so all we're looking to do is to get this portion, well, we're sitting like this on our drawer, this to get into there and go along our roller cage on both sides. I should mention one thing too. When you're sizing these, the spec is whatever your inside dimension is, minus 1 inch, plus or minus 0, which is bull. I go inside dimension minus 1 1/16 of an inch exactly. That gives you 1/16 of an inch. Now, it's funny, I watched a video that popped up, and the guy was explaining how, you know, if your carcass isn't completely square this way, if it's, say it goes out, you can put your screwdriver in behind here and bend it out, and this tab will actually bend and it'll hold in place. And he's a pretty well-known guy. I can't remember who it is, but it had like freaking 600,000 likes. And the guy was talking about it like it was, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And I think he said he had recently just found out about it. I've been doing this for like 30 years with these stupid tabs. And it just blew me away that everyone was so, oh, that's such an amazing idea. What do you think they're for? Why do you think they're cut out like that? It just seemed very obvious to me. And I was quite surprised that so many people were blown away by it. Anyways, let's get a drawer in. Confession time. I put the drawer slides on the wrong drawer and it wouldn't go in. Now we got it on the right one, so here we go. In one, and in the other. Sometimes you just gotta work them in a little bit. And once it's in, check your soft close. Bam. Okay, that's one. Now, all we're gonna do is make our second cut on our plywood that we've marked here at 10 1/16. Okay, well, I thought I hit record and I guess I didn't, so it's a very simple process. All I did was I cut my 10 1/16 piece from the taller piece, mounted it here, had my slide on top, put that one in. The bottom slide just goes right on the bottom of the unit, and that's all there is to it. I'm going to show you quickly the difference between the soft close and the self-closing. So this is a soft close. You see, it just draws in nice and easy. And this is a different unit that's going to get some heavy stuff put in it. So here is the self-closing. And the one last thing I should mention is when you have your piece of plywood that you're using for your reference jig, you start with the smallest drawers first, obviously from the top. That's when your plywood piece is going to be the tallest. So you're going to do all your shortest drawers that are up the highest first, and then you're going to slowly work your way down based on the measurements, so you're not going through 20 pieces of plywood. I used a fresh piece on that last one for demonstration, but basically I went around and I did all of them, and I went from the highest point of where the slides are going to mount, and I slowly cut the piece and work my way down. Like I said, just so you're not going through 7 or 8 different pieces of plywood for each drawer assembly. So a little food for thought there. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and we'll see you for the next one.